This is the story of freedom, of a boy named Uhuru who tried to break the cycle of generational trauma and abuse that passed down from father to son. It was only around the 13th year of his life that he had began to notice a shift in his father's behavior. Unbeknownst to him, his grandfather had walked a very similar path. In earlier days, his father would come home, greet mother, and grab Uhuru, toss him into the air smiling. Now all he does is stumble in reeking of drink and dismay. Uhuru knew that there were demons that plagued the man, but of which he would never speak, because that was not what real men do. Never show weakness, never be vulnerable. The alcohol-fueled rage became abuse. Instead of talking about his demons, he allowed them to consume the family, and Uhuru's mother bore the brunt of his father's frustration. By year 15, the last strands of hope that barely held their family together broke. His parents divorced. Uhuru's mother received custody of Uhuru and his sister. Not that it really mattered what the court said, their father was long gone. At some arbitrary point down the road, they came to learn that Uhuru's father had died. Who knows how? It didn't matter. The world was better off for it, as far as Uhuru was concerned. His mother struggled to cope. Raising 2 kids alone was never part of the plan. She was fortunate though. Her workplace offered a women's support program, and she got the help that she needed to better herself, albeit too late to alter Uhuru's fate. During the period of his life when his mother was getting the help she needed, Uhuru felt rejected and ignored. Despite her best efforts, his mother needed time to learn how to cope. During this time, she could not be the support Uhuru needed. Nobody could. So he turned to his friends, whose wannabe gangster street cred prevented him from feeling open enough to talk about his love for and desire to pursue the arts. At a very toxic time in our social history, art was not for real men, unless you were a rapper, of course. One of the guys was a drug dealer, and quite proudly so. He was Uhuru's gateway into the world that filled the hole left by his absent parents. He found solace in smoking weed. Boso before beer and you're in the clear, they would say. The temporary highs made the rejection and loneliness bearable for a while. As time went on, more and more substance was needed to maintain the sense of relief that it gave him. He became insolent toward his teachers, but even if he had been open to listening, there were no real support programs for boys and young men. It was not long before even an outsider could see his father in him. Uhuru's behavior began to shift, much like his father and grandfather before him. Years had passed. One night, Uhuru and the boys decided it would be cool to steal a car and just drive it around a bit before deserting it somewhere. With the confidence of a drunken fool, Uhuru insisted he could drive. But he couldn't. He could barely see, let alone control a motor vehicle. When he woke up, he was in the back of a police van. Concussion, like substance abuse, does that to a person. You don't know how you got to where you are, but you did, by your own doing. Here's the thing about prison. You have two things that can change a life: time and isolation from those factors of the past that influenced you badly. Uhuru met a man in his mandatory counseling sessions. The man created a safe space in which Uhuru learned that he had the power to break the cycle that had plagued his family for years. The man was a counselor and a therapist who taught art as a means of catharsis. Uhuru used his time to enrich his mind. He used the tools that were offered to him to study while still incarcerated. Uhuru was motivated by the memories of his father. He used his trauma to fuel change in himself so that he would be better than his father was. He knew that part of his journey would be to embrace his passion for art, a passion that lay dormant inside him all those years. I love how in the movies, when the protagonist decides to change his life, he miraculously somehow develops the intellectual capacity required to succeed. For Uhuru, it was more realistic. He failed, but persevered, until the day came when he would walk up to the man with the funny hat and big stick and receive his diploma. Education was not the only thing Uhuru had found at university. He found love. He met Tando, who was a teaching assistant master's candidate at the time. She brought with her a daughter from a previous marriage, and the three of them became a family. 3 would soon become 4 with the birth of Jongo. Uhuru knew that he would never be the father that he saw in his own. He did everything he could to be present and a positive influence in Jongo's life. After all, he was the breaker of the cycle, right? Surprise, surprise, at around 15 years old, Jongo's behaviors began to mirror his grandfather's and his father's at that age. Uhuru was confused and disappointed. He had done everything he knew to prevent history repeating itself, and yet, there they were. He did his best to help Jongo, but he just could not get through to him. In retrospect, we know now that the truth of generational trauma was just not taken seriously enough back then. Uhuru pushed him to get into a TVET college, but he squandered every opportunity that came his way. He got into hard drugs and alcohol. He had multiple sexual partners and was not responsible when he was with any of them. There was a short period of time when, to the best of her knowledge, he was committed to just one young woman. That relationship ended as abruptly as his time at the college, after his substance abuse led him to assaulting her and being expelled. Once is a random occurrence. Twice is a coincidence. 3 times or more is a pattern. Do you see it? With little choice and a drug habit to fund, he got himself a job as a security guard. It didn't last long. One night his boss found him drinking on the job and fired him. By January of 2022, the world had been rocked by the COVID-19 pandemic, and Uhuru was unfortunately one of its victims. His fight in hospital lasted just 9 days. Jongo found himself drowning in alcohol and HIV symptoms. The test to confirm that his past philandering had its consequences, coupled with his lungs burning from the pain of TB, told him that he did not have long before he would see his father again. Embarrassed to face his mother, Jongo turned to his sister Vuyo, the last bit of hope remaining in his life. I wish I had listened to him. It was a last-ditch effort. Jongo sought help at the local clinic, but what was left to save? He had mutilated his bodily organs through years of substance abuse. The combination of TB and HIV treatments ravaged them. They stood little chance. Alone on his deathbed, Ncho called Vuyo. But all he could muster were tears and words in his own mind. What could have been? It was in those last moments that Ncho heard Uhuru's voice. I have failed you, my son. There was another way. I see that now. The bonds of generational trauma run far deeper than anything that I could have truly understood in our time. However, I believe that through the likes of art therapy, through the power of music, the brush and the paints, you and I could have forged a bond stronger than generational trauma. And perhaps our story could have been different. Perhaps